There are moments in a man's life that split everything into before and after. Mine came on a Friday evening in November, inside a house I built with my own two hands 30 years ago. I was sitting in Eleanor's old recliner, my late wife's chair, the one that still smelled faintly of her lavender lotion if you press your face into the armrest, and breathed in slowly. I did that sometimes, late at night, when the house felt too quiet and the silence pressed against the walls like something alive. The recliner faced the window. Outside, the November fog was rolling through Portland in soft gray waves, the kind that makes the city look like a watercolor painting, beautiful and cold at the same time. I had my phone propped in my palm, squinting at the screen the way a man does when he's 68 years old and still not entirely at peace with modern technology. My daughter, Sarah, had set up video calling for me the previous Christmas. "It's easy, Dad," she'd said, tapping the screen with the confidence of someone who had grown up holding a phone instead of a pencil. "Just tap here. Please like this video and listen to my story till the end, and let me know which city you're listening from. That way, I can see how far this story has traveled. Because what happened to me, I believe it's happening to people everywhere, and they need to hear this." I tapped the call icon and waited. 2 rings, and there she was. Sarah Morrison, my daughter, 38 years old. She had Eleanor's warm brown eyes, the kind that crinkled at the corners when she laughed, and my stubborn jawline. I used to tell her she got the best of both of us. Looking at her on that screen, I still believed it. "Hey, Dad." She smiled. "Happy early birthday." I chuckled. Her birthday was that day. Mine wasn't for another month. "Happy birthday to you, sweetheart. How's your day been?" "Busy." She glanced off screen. "Marcus is in the kitchen. I think he's burning something." She laughed. That easy, warm laugh I'd been hearing for 38 years. "Thank you for the flowers, by the way. The yellow roses. Your mother always said yellow roses for November birthdays." "I know." Her voice softened for just a moment. Then she cleared her throat. "Oh, those papers you brought over last week. The estate documents. I signed them. They're on my desk if you need to pick them up." Something flickered across her face when I said it. Something fast. Too fast to read. "Great, thanks, Dad. I'll grab them this weekend." "No rush. Just wanted you to know." A clatter somewhere behind her. "I should go. Dinner's about to be a disaster." Go, go. "Love you, honey." "Love you too, Dad." She reached toward the screen. I thought I tapped the red button. My thumb hit the glass. The image shrank. I set the phone down on the arm of Eleanor's chair and pushed myself up to stretch my back, the way I do every hour now, because 50 years of construction work leaves its mark on a man's spine. That's when I heard her voice again. But she wasn't talking to me. The old fool signed everything. Sarah's voice, coming through the phone speaker, bright with something that had nothing to do with affection. I froze. My hand reached back for the chair arm, gripping it until my knuckles went white. A man's voice next. "Marcus, my son-in-law. You're sure he didn't read them? Dad doesn't read anything I give him." A pause. Then a laugh. She actually laughed. "He trusts me." Oh, the sound of that laugh. I want you to understand. I've heard my daughter's laugh for 38 years. I know every version of it. The surprised laugh, the nervous laugh, the genuine laugh that comes from her belly when something truly catches her off guard. This was none of those. This was something colder, something calculated. "The lawyer's ready," she continued. "We file the guardianship petition Monday morning. By Monday afternoon, he'll be in Sunrise Gardens and we'll be free." Marcus's voice, carrying a grin, finally getting out from under that debt. "Dad built this house 30 years ago." Sarah's voice dropped to something almost reverent, except the reverence wasn't there. "Told me 1,000 times it would be mine someday." Another laugh. Colder. Guess someday came early. I don't remember sitting back down. But I was in Eleanor's chair, the phone still on the armrest, their voices still coming through the speaker clear as glass. I should have said something. I should have confronted them right then, told them I could hear every word, watch the silence rush in like water after a dam breaks. But I'm a civil engineer. I've spent 50 years solving problems. And engineers don't react. They calculate. When the call finally ended, I sat in the silence of a house I had poured, framed, wired, and painted with my own hands. The oak floors creaked the way they always did when the temperature dropped. The radiator pipes ticked. The foundation groaned softly beneath it all. 40 years of sounds I could identify with my eyes closed. Tonight, they sounded different. Like the house itself was holding its breath, waiting to see what I would do. I was 68 years old. My hands weren't as steady as they used to be. But my mind was still sharp. I stood up, walked to my study, picked up the folder of documents I had signed without reading, and spread them across my desk under the lamp. Durable power of attorney. Advanced healthcare directive. 6 pages neatly stapled. I had signed the last page without reading the first 5. Why would I? She was my daughter. I held page 1 up to the light. The spacing between lines was tighter than page 4. The header, estate planning documents, was in a slightly different typeface than the body text. She had given me page 4 to sign. Then she had attached different pages to the front. My signature was real. The document beneath it was not. I set the papers down, carefully, like they might explode. I looked at the calendar on my desk. Today was Friday, November 15th. Monday morning, they would file a guardianship petition with the court. If a judge signed off, I would lose legal control of my finances, my property, my medical decisions. Everything I had built over 40 years would be handed to the people who had laughed about putting me in a nursing home. I had 72 hours. I picked up my phone, scrolled to a name I'd had saved for 40 years. Raymond Cole, retired detective. Best friend since we worked a construction site investigation back in 1985. He was the detective, I was the engineer, and together we proved a contractor had cut corners on the foundation rebar. We'd been meeting for lunch once a month ever since. The phone rang twice. Daniel. His voice was rough and alert, even at 10 at night. It's late. What's wrong? I looked at the forged papers on my desk, at the phone that had recorded my daughter's laughter without her knowing it, at the living room where I'd sat and listened to my own child plan my destruction. I need you to come over, I said. Tonight. Daniel, what happened? I closed my eyes. My daughter is trying to take everything I have, I said. Not with a weapon, with paperwork. And I have 72 hours to stop her. There was a pause. Then Raymond's voice came back, steady and certain as poured concrete. I'll be there in 20 minutes. Right now, I need you to stay with me. Because what Raymond and I discovered over the next 3 days, it wasn't just about money. It wasn't just about a house. It was about how far a person can fall from who they used to be. And it will break your heart. Raymond's truck pulled into my driveway at 10:58. I heard the familiar diesel rattle and opened the door before he reached the porch. He was 70 years old, tall and lean, with military short gray hair and the kind of eyes that spent 30 years on the police force learning to read a room in under 5 seconds. He looked at my face once and didn't waste time on small talk. Show me. I handed him my phone with the recording queued up. He listened without speaking, standing in the middle of my living room, perfectly still. When it finished, he was quiet for 30 seconds. Elder abuse, he finally said. Organized. Premeditated. This didn't come together overnight, Daniel. Guardianship petitions require lawyer consultations, medical evaluations, financial documentation. They've been planning this for months. He took the folder. Raymond pulled reading glasses from his jacket and spread the documents across my kitchen table. He examined each page with the methodical patience of someone who once stood over crime scenes looking for the thing everyone else missed. Your signature is real, he said, pointing to page 4. But look at page 2. The text sits differently on the page. Whoever did this scanned your signature page, then printed the other pages separately and bound them together. Same paper stock, different printer. I had noticed the font. He saw the machinery behind it. Can we prove forgery with a document examiner? Yes, he said, but that takes time we don't have. He set the papers down. You said they're filing Monday morning. 9 o'clock. That's what Sarah said. Then by Monday afternoon, if the judge signs off, you lose control of everything. Raymond sat down and gestured for me to do the same. We can't stop them from filing, but we can build a case that destroys them the moment they try. Ow! He held up 3 fingers. 1. Solid proof of forgery. 2. Evidence of their financial motive. 3. Someone on the inside who can tell us what they're planning. I thought about that last one. Marcus is in real estate. There might be money trouble. I'll dig into that tomorrow. But the inside source is trickier. Raymond's eyes met mine. Do they have anyone close enough to help us? The thought came immediately. Connor, I said. My grandson. Raymond leaned forward. How old? 16. Smart kid. Wants to study engineering. He comes over most weekends to work on science projects. I paused. He's Sarah's son, which makes him either your best asset, Raymond said quietly, or your biggest risk. I thought about Connor. Last Saturday, he'd been here for 4 hours, building a model bridge for his physics class. We talked about load distribution, tension, compression. He'd stayed for dinner, frozen pizza, because I still couldn't cook worth a damn. He'd laughed at my attempt at garlic bread and eaten 3 pieces anyway. I think he'd help, I said. If I asked. You think? Raymond stood and walked to the window. If you call him in and he tells his parents, this whole thing accelerates. They file for emergency guardianship tomorrow instead of Monday. We lose our window. So we test him. You call him tomorrow. Something normal. Homework help, a project, whatever you usually do. Feel him out. See if he's noticed anything strange at home. Raymond turned back. But you don't tell him what's happening. Not yet. You just assess. I looked at the forged documents still spread across my kitchen table. And if he's not on our side, Raymond held my gaze. Then we're out of options. After he left, I stood at the window and watched his taillights disappear down the street. I was about to bet everything on a 16-year-old boy's loyalty. A boy I love completely. A boy whose parents were planning to take my freedom away and sell the house where I'd watched him take his first steps. I walked back to Eleanor's chair and sat down. On the mantel above the fireplace was our wedding photo, 1987. Eleanor in a cream dress with her hair pinned up, laughing at something I'd said right before the shutter clicked. I was looking at her instead of the camera. I looked at it for a long time. I whispered her name into the empty room. The house whispered back with its 40-year language of creaking wood and sighing pipes. I went to bed at midnight. I didn't sleep. What Raymond found the next morning wasn't just financial ruin. It was something darker, something that would rewrite everything I thought I knew about my son-in-law. And when Connor arrived at my door on Saturday afternoon, the look on his face told me he already knew something was wrong. The question was, whose side was he on? I woke at 6 Saturday morning after 2 hours of sleep that felt more like drowning than resting. I made coffee, checked my phone every 10 minutes, stood at the kitchen window watching the fog thin over Portland's rooftops. At noon, Raymond called. Daniel. His voice had that flat, measured tone he used when he'd crack something open. I've got what we need. I set down my coffee cup. How bad? Bad enough for someone to do something desperate. Papers shuffled on his end. Marcus Morrison. Credit card debt. $124,000 across 6 cards. Business loans from a failed real estate venture. $723,000. Total debt load, just under $850,000. My hand tightened around the phone. His income is $68,000 a year. Mid-level real estate agent. There's no mathematical way he's servicing that debt. He's been robbing Peter to pay Paul for at least 2 years. $850,000. And my house would sell for $1.2 million. That cleared his debt and left them $350,000 to start over. I walked to the window. Eleanor's garden was still out there, overgrown now because I couldn't bring myself to tear it out. She'd planted roses and lavender and tomatoes every summer. I could still see her in her wide-brimmed hat, pruning shears in hand, humming something to herself. There's more, Raymond said. Tell me. I called a contact at the bureau, had him run Marcus through their databases. A pause. In 2019, Marcus was investigated for real estate fraud, specifically targeting elderly homeowners, convincing them to sell properties below market value, then flipping them for profit. 3 complaints. The investigation went nowhere. But Daniel, he's done this before. He tried to. This time, he married into the perfect opportunity. After Raymond hung up, I looked at the text I'd sent Connor that morning. Want to come over this afternoon? Have an interesting physics problem I want to show you. Connor had responded immediately. Yes. Told Mom I'm going to Jake's house this weekend. I'll bike over around 1. I read that line twice. Told Mom I'm going to Jake's house. He'd lied to his mother about where he was going, without me suggesting it, without me asking. Maybe that was ordinary teenage behavior. Or maybe Connor had his own reasons for not wanting Sarah to know where he'd really be. At 12:40, I saw him through the front window. A figure on a bicycle, pedaling up my driveway with his backpack slung over one shoulder, wearing a band t-shirt I didn't recognize and jeans with fashionable holes in the knees. He had glasses, dark hair, a narrow face. Looking at him was like looking at myself 45 years ago. I opened the door before he could knock. "Hey, Grandpa." He grinned, that easy, unguarded grin that hadn't yet learned to hide itself. "Hey, kiddo, come on in." He leaned his bike against the porch railing and followed me inside. "So what's the physics problem?" "Actually," I said, gesturing to the couch, "I wanted to talk to you about something else first. Sit down for a minute." Something in my voice changed. I heard it happen. So did Connor. His smile faded. He sat down slowly, suddenly cautious. 16 years old and already learning to read a room. This was the moment Raymond had warned me about. I sat across from him in Eleanor's chair. "Have you noticed anything strange at home lately?" I asked. "Your parents acting different? Talking about things when they think you're not listening?" Connor's face changed. He knew something. I kept my voice even. "Connor, I need you to tell me the truth, even if it's hard." He looked down at his hands, then back up at me. "Mom's been asking me weird questions," he said quietly. "What kind of questions?" "About you." He would meet my eyes. "Like, do you forget things a lot? Do you repeat yourself? Do you ever get confused about what day it is?" My chest tightened, but I kept my face still. "And what did you tell her?" I told her no. His voice hardened. "Because it's true. You don't forget anything. You remember the exact date you poured the foundation for this house. You remember my third-grade teacher's name. You even remember the name of the dog we had when I was 5. "Biscuit," I said softly. "Yeah, Biscuit." Connor's voice cracked on the word, just slightly. "So why is she acting like you're losing your mind?" I stood up, walked slowly to the shelf where I kept an old cassette recorder from my site inspection days. I transferred the audio from my phone to it the night before. Old technology, harder to trace. I pressed play. Sarah's voice filled the room, cold and bright at the same time. "The guardianship petition goes in Monday morning. Once the judge sees the medical records, it's done. We move him to Sunrise Gardens, sell the house, clear the debt. 48 hours, Marcus. 48 hours, and we're free." I watched Connor's face go pale. He stared at the recorder like it had reached out and slapped him. His voice was barely audible. "That's Mom." "Yes. She's talking about putting you in a home." He stood up so fast his chair scraped backward. "She's talking about selling this house." His breathing was ragged now. Grandpa, that's fraud." "Yes," I said. "It is." He turned to me, and I saw it, the exact moment the pieces connected behind his eyes. The questions, the notebook, all of it. "She wanted me to write down every time you were confused," he said, his voice cracking now in earnest. "But you were never confused. She wanted me to build fake evidence against you. And if this ends up in court," I said gently, "she'll put you on the stand and ask you to confirm it." Connor's hands balled into fists. "I won't do it." "I know you won't." I walked over and put a hand on his shoulder. "But I need more than that, Connor. I need your help. I want to pause here and ask you something. If you were in Connor's place, 16 years old, caught between your parent and your grandfather, what would you do?" Because what this boy chose next changed everything. And I believe it says something profound about who we become when we're tested. I reached into my pocket and pulled out an old flip phone. The kind nobody uses anymore. The kind that doesn't connect to a family plan. Doesn't show up on anyone's account. I'd bought it that morning with cash from the hardware store. Connor looked at it. "You want me to spy on my own parents? I want you to help me protect myself." I kept my voice steady, even though my heart was hammering somewhere in my chest. "Connor, I built this house with my own hands. I raised your mother in this house. I sat with your grandmother in this house until the day she passed. This isn't just property. It's my life. And they're trying to take it. Not because I'm sick, not because I need help, but because they're drowning in debt and they see me as the solution." Connor was quiet for a long time. "Then what if they find the phone? Keep it hidden. Keep it off unless you're recording. Send the files to this email address." I handed him a slip of paper. "Delete them right after. Don't text me. Don't call. Just the recordings. What if I get caught? I looked him in the eye. I'll take the blame. I'll say I forced you. He stared at the phone in his hands, turning it over and over. Then he looked up at me. Behind those glasses, his eyes were frightened. But underneath the fear was something else. The same stubborn set to his jaw that Eleanor used to have when she decided something was worth fighting for. Okay, he said. I'll do it. At 4 o'clock, Connor got on his bike and rode home. I stood on the porch watching him disappear down the street, and I felt two things at the same time, something close to hope and something close to shame. I had just turned my grandson into a spy. Eleanor would have hated this. She always said families protect each other, not manipulate each other. But Eleanor never had to fight her own daughter. At 4:15, my phone rang. Raymond, get to my house. 7 o'clock tonight. And Daniel, bring a strong stomach. What I found on Marcus is worse than we thought. I hung up and looked at the cassette recorder still sitting on the coffee table. Newton's third law. For every action, an equal and opposite reaction. Sarah pushed. Now I was pushing back. Raymond's dining table looked like a crime scene when I walked in at 7. Papers everywhere. Printouts. Bank statements. Legal filings. He didn't offer coffee. He just looked at me. Sit down, Daniel. I sat. Jessica didn't just forge financial documents. He paused, long enough that I noticed. She forged your medical records. The room tilted. I reached for the back of the chair. Raymond slid a folder across the table. 6 appointments, March through November. All under my name. All at different clinics around Portland. I opened the folder. March, a memory clinic report stating I was confused and forgetful. May, a neurologist reporting I seemed disoriented, had trouble with directions. July, a psychiatrist flagging early dementia. September and October, documented worsening. November, 2 weeks ago, a Dr. Patricia Brennan recommending immediate assisted living placement. I had never been to any of these places. She used the forged power of attorney, Raymond said. Called these clinics, claimed to be calling on your behalf. Said you were too confused to come in person. They did phone consultations. Documented everything. Billed Medicare. Never met you. Just took her word for it. My hands were shaking. All 6 calls came from Sarah's cell phone, Raymond said. But the records list you as the patient. I closed the folder. Set it down. Stared at the tablecloth for a moment. She built a fake medical history, I said. 8 months of it. Step by step, Raymond said quietly. You taught her how to plan long-term. I drove home in silence. When I pulled into the driveway, I went straight to the side yard. The green trash bin. Tomorrow's pickup wasn't until Monday. I flipped the lid and dug through the garbage. Fast food wrappers. Junk mail. Then 6 white envelopes, barely crumpled. Appointment reminder cards. All addressed to me. Memory Clinic, March 15th. Neurology, May 8th. Psychiatry, July 20th. Every fake appointment. She had intercepted them from the mailbox before I ever saw them. Kept them neat and organized, then threw them out this week because the plan was almost complete. I carried all 6 inside and spread them on the kitchen table. And I remembered, 6 months ago, Sarah had started calling more often, asking how I was feeling, saying things like, Dad, you seem a little forgetful lately. Are you sure you're okay? I had thought she was being a good daughter. She was building a narrative. I went upstairs. Eleanor's jewelry box sat on the dresser, a wooden box I'd built 30 years ago, inlaid with cherry and maple. I opened it. Her pearl earrings, the silver bracelet, a tangle of necklaces, and an empty velvet slot, the slot where her wedding ring used to be. Last summer, Sarah had asked to borrow it, said she wanted it appraised for insurance purposes. I handed it over without hesitation. She never gave it back. I pulled out my phone. Searched Portland pawn shops, diamond solitaire, yellow gold. 3 minutes. I found it. Estate jewelry listing from a shop across town. 1.5 carat diamond solitaire, yellow gold. Sold in July of the previous year for $3,200. I saved for 6 months to buy that ring in 1983. Eleanor wore it every single day for 35 years. I closed the browser. I didn't cry. I didn't throw anything. I didn't make a sound. I just stood in the bedroom that still smelled faintly of Eleanor's lavender lotion, even after all this time. And something inside me went cold and sharp. Why did next? I never imagined I'd have to do. I put on a costume in my own home. I shuffled around my own living room, pretending to be a man whose mind was failing. And I waited for them to walk through my door. What happened when they did, when the doctor sat across from me and my own daughter stood in my living room directing it all, is something I still see when I close my eyes. Sunday morning. The house was still dark when I heard Raymond's truck in the driveway. He wasn't alone when he knocked. He was carrying a canvas bag and a sheet of poster board under his arm, and he looked like a man who had not slept either. "We don't have time for pleasantries," he said. "That doctor is coming at 2 o'clock. I stared at him. "How do you know?" He held up his phone. Connor had sent a recording the night before. 15 seconds of audio, Sarah's voice on the phone in the kitchen. "Dr. Brennan, you're coming at 2, right? We need a certificate saying he's not competent. $5,000 like we agreed. $5,000. Not a consultation fee. A bribe." Raymond sat down at my kitchen table. "Here's what's going to happen," he said. "That doctor is coming to certify you're incompetent. Sarah is paying her to do it. So you're going to give them exactly what they expect." He reached into the canvas bag. "But we're going to record every word." He pulled out a wall clock, the ordinary kind you'd find in any kitchen, and unscrewed the back. A tiny camera lens was embedded in the face. "This goes on the wall behind where you'll sit." He pulled out a picture frame next. "This goes on the bookshelf, angled toward the couch." Then a wireless microphone, no bigger than a button. "This goes in your shirt pocket. It'll pick up everything within 15 feet. He spent 20 minutes installing the cameras, testing the feed on his phone. Then he pulled a wrinkled button-down shirt from the bag and held it toward me. "Put this on. Ms. Button it." I looked at him for a moment. Then I took the shirt. For the next 2 hours, Raymond coached me. He sat across the table from me and fired questions. "What day is it? What's your address? Who's the president?" And I fumbled through answers. Let my eyes drift. Asked him to repeat himself. Said the wrong house number. Said the wrong president. It felt humiliating in a way I hadn't anticipated. I was a man who had spent 50 years calculating bridge loads in his head. I had never forgotten a blueprint in my life. And here I was, sitting at my own kitchen table, practicing how to seem like I couldn't remember what year it was. Raymond watched me without expression. "Slower," he said. "You're not drunk." Confused people search for words. They don't slur them. I tried again. At 11:30, my phone buzzed. "Connor, Grandpa, just heard Mom on the phone. She said, 'Dr. Brennan, you're coming at 2, right? We need a certificate saying he's not competent. $5,000 like we agreed.'" I recorded it. Sent it through. I showed Raymond. $5,000, he said quietly. "We have proof she's paying a doctor. And now we need proof of what the doctor says when she gets here." Raymond nodded. Before he stepped back, he added one more thing. He called a detective he'd worked with for 15 years. A woman named Detective Clara Harrison, Elder Abuse Division, Portland PD, sharp, direct, the kind of person who had seen too many bad situations to be surprised by one more. He explained everything on speaker while I listened. When he finished, there was a pause. Then her voice, flat and professional. "I'll be there. 9:30 Monday morning. But Frank, Raymond, this better be as solid as you say." "It is." At 1 o'clock, I went upstairs to put on the costume. Wrinkled shirt, Miss Butant. Loose jeans. Shirt tucked and crooked. I looked at myself in the bathroom mirror for a long time. 68 years old. Built hundreds of structures, still standing across 3 states. Mentored young engineers. Poured the foundation of a life I was proud of. Standing in my own bathroom, dressed like a man who couldn't figure out which button matched which hole, preparing to perform incompetence in my own living room so my daughter couldn't take everything I'd built. I stared at my reflection. Then I thought about Sarah's voice on that recording. Cold, bright, calculated. 48 hours, and we're free. I turned off the bathroom light and headed downstairs. At 1:45, a dark sedan pulled up to the house. A tall woman stepped out from the driver's side, blonde, probably late 50s, carrying a medical bag. Behind her, the passenger door opened. "Sarah." She and the doctor exchanged a few words on the sidewalk, then started toward my front door. Raymond stepped quietly into the kitchen. The cameras were on. The microphone was live. I settled into the living room chair, adjusted my crooked shirt, and took a long, slow breath. The doorbell rang. I pushed myself up slowly, shuffled to the door and opened it. Dr. Patricia Brennan. Shorter than I expected. Navy blazer over a white blouse. Expensive leather bag. Professional smile. Practiced, smooth, the kind that had been applied and removed thousands of times. Behind her, Sarah stood on the porch step, hands clasped, face arranged into something that was trying to look like concern. "Dad." Her voice was soft. "This is Dr. Brennan. Remember I mentioned her? I scheduled a health check for you." I let my eyes drift between them, like I was trying to place the memory. "A doctor? Did you tell me about this?" "It's all right, Mr. Hayes." Dr. Brennan's voice was warm and reassuring. "May I come in?" I shuffled back into the living room. They followed. Dr. Brennan sat on the couch, pulled out a clipboard. Sarah stayed near the doorway, arms crossed, watching. "Mr. Hayes, can you tell me what day it is?" I paused, let my eyes wander toward the window, as if searching for the answer outside. "Today is Saturday or Sunday. I'm not entirely sure." She wrote something on her clipboard. "And do you remember my name?" I squinted. "Your name is Doctor. I'm sorry, I've forgotten." More writing. They went through more questions. My address. I got the street right, but the number wrong. The president. I said someone who hadn't been president in 15 years. Whether I was managing daily tasks. I let my voice trail off, said I sometimes couldn't remember if I'd eaten breakfast. Sarah stepped forward. Her voice was thick with something that was trying very hard to be worry. "Doctor, he's getting worse every week. Last week, he left the gas stove on all night. I came over the next morning, and the whole house smelled like gas. I'm terrified something's going to happen." I kept my face blank. I don't have a gas stove. I installed an electric range in 1987 and haven't touched it since. Dr. Brennan looked up from her clipboard. "Mr. Hayes, do you remember leaving the stove on?" I don't think so." I shook my head slowly. "Maybe. He doesn't remember," Sarah said softly, her voice breaking just slightly. "That's what scares me." Dr. Brennan closed her clipboard and stood. "Mr. Hayes, I'd like to step outside with your daughter for just a moment." They went to the front porch. The door didn't close all the way. The wireless microphone near the door frame caught every word. "Doctor, can you write a certificate saying he needs assisted living? Something I can submit with the guardianship petition?" A pause. Cautious. "I need to do a more thorough evaluation. These things take." We agreed on 5,000. "Here's 2,500 up front." The faint crinkle of an envelope. Then Dr. Brennan's voice, smoother now. Lower. "Well, in that case, I can certainly expedite the paperwork. I'll have a report written by this afternoon." The door swung open. Dr. Brennan stepped back inside, professional smile firmly in place. "Mr. Hayes, based on what I've observed today, I'm recommending that you be placed in an assisted living facility. You need 24-hour care. For your own safety." I let my face crumple a little. "Assisted? What's that?" "A place where people can help you." Sarah moved to my side, crouched down, took both my hands in hers. Her eyes were wet. Whether those were real tears or a performance, I will never know. Even now, "Dad," she whispered, "I'm so worried about you. I love you. You know that, right?" I looked at her, let my voice waver. You're a good daughter." She squeezed my hands, stood, and walked to the door. "I'll call you tonight, okay?" I nodded. The door closed. Her car started. The engine faded down the street. I sat for 30 more seconds, just to be sure. Then I stood up straight, walked to the window, and watched her taillights disappear around the corner. Raymond stepped out for the back bedroom. "She's gone," I said. He held up his phone. The video feed was crystal clear. Jessica and Dr. Brennan on the porch. The envelope. The transaction. Every word. He played it twice. "We got her," he said quietly. "Bribery. Medical fraud. Criminal conspiracy. This is prosecutable." I pulled off the wrinkled shirt and tossed it onto the couch. The costume was over. That night at 8, my phone buzzed. "Connor, Grandpa, Mom and Marcus just opened champagne. Mom said, we file at 9 tomorrow morning. By noon, the house is ours." Marcus said, "Finally, debt-free." They're laughing really loud. I recorded it. I read the message twice. Set the phone down. Raymond looked at me from across the room. "You going to be able to sleep tonight?" I shook my head. "That's all right," I said. "Why is that?" I looked out the window at the dark street, the porch light throwing long shadows across the front yard where Eleanor's rose bushes still came back every spring, even when I forgot to tend them. Because tomorrow, I said, my daughter is going to learn the last lesson I'll ever teach her. Before the sun came up Monday morning, Raymond and I sat together at the kitchen table and built the most important thing I've ever built in my life. Not with concrete or steel, with documents, evidence, recordings, and a trust fund that would protect Connor forever. And when Sarah walked through my door at 9 o'clock that morning, smiling like she'd already won, she had no idea she was walking straight into the foundation she'd broken herself. Raymond arrived at 6 Monday morning with a canvas bag full of documents and a large sheet of poster board. "Let's organize this," he said. He spread everything across the dining table with the care of a man who had once laid out evidence for trial. 6 appointment reminder cards, arranged chronologically, March through November. The fake medical records, Brad's financial statements, the FaceTime recording, the video of Dr. Brennan accepting the envelope, 18 of Connor's text messages and audio files, and the trust documents. The night before, while Raymond was still putting everything in order, a man named attorney Henry Whitmore had come to my house at 11 at night because Raymond had called in a favor, and because Henry Whitmore was the kind of attorney who understood that some situations don't wait for business hours. He was 60 years old, gray-haired, wearing a vest and tie even at that hour, carrying a leather briefcase that looked older than my truck. "Mr. Hayes," he'd said, extending his hand, "I understand you need to build something that can't be knocked down." We sat at the kitchen table, and Henry explained it clearly. "An irrevocable living trust," he said, sketching on his legal pad. "You transfer ownership of this house into the trust. I become the trustee, the manager. Connor becomes the beneficiary, the person who inherits when you pass. On paper, the house no longer belongs to you. Even if a judge grants Sarah guardianship, she has zero control over this asset. Zero." I looked at the diagram. "And she can't challenge it. She can try. But irrevocable means irrevocable. Once you sign, even you can't undo it. The house is protected forever." He looked at me carefully. "But Daniel, you understand what that means. You're betting everything on your grandson. If something changes..." "It won't," I said. Raymond leaned forward. "You sure about that?" I thought about Connor's face when he heard Sarah's voice on that recording. The way his hand shook. The way he looked at me when he said yes. "I've spent 40 years betting on concrete and steel," I said. "Tonight, I'm betting on my grandson." Henry nodded slowly. He pulled out a laptop and a portable printer. At 11 o'clock, he slid the final document across the table. I signed my name 3 times, my hand steadier than it had been in days. Henry tapped his laptop keys. "Filed. The state system runs around the clock. By 8 this morning, this house legally belongs to the trust." After he left, I stood at the back window looking at the yard. The old swing set was still there, the one I'd built for Sarah when she was 5. Wood weathered now, chin a little rusty, still standing. I had pushed her on that swing 1,000 times. Every time, she'd shouted, "Higher, Daddy, push me higher." Now she was trying to push me. Not up, down. I turned away from the window. Monday morning, 7:30. My phone buzzed. "Connor, Grandpa, Mom told me to stay home from school today. She said we're going to have good news soon. I told her I want to come see you first. She said okay. Then my friend Jake could pick me up from your house after. I'm biking over now. Are you ready?" I texted back. "Ready. 3 dots. Then, I love you, Grandpa." I stared at the screen. Connor hadn't said those words to me since he was 12 years old. For years of ordinary teenage distance. And now, on this morning of all mornings, he said them. I set the phone down before my hand started shaking too hard to hold it. At 7:45, he knocked. He looked so young, standing on the porch. School uniform, khaki pants, white polo, backpack over one shoulder. Too young to be carrying any of this. "Are you okay?" I asked. He shook his head. "No, but I know this is the right thing." I pulled him into a hug. He was taller than he'd been a year ago. Almost my height now. I could feel him trembling through his jacket. "Whatever happens today," I said quietly, "none of this is your fault. You didn't cause it. You didn't ask for it. And you are the hero of this story, not the villain. He nodded against my shoulder. When he pulled back, his eyes were red. But he wasn't crying. Where do you want me? Living room. Just sit. I'll handle the rest. At 8:15, Raymond arrived with Detective Clara Harrison. She was in her mid-40s, wearing jeans and a plain jacket, hair pulled back, with the kind of face that had seen too many broken families to be shocked by one more. She shook my hand with a firm grip and looked at me directly. Mr. Hayes, I've reviewed all the evidence. This is the clearest case of elder abuse I've seen in 15 years. She held my gaze. But I need to make sure you understand. Once I walk in and make arrests, there's no turning back. I know, I said. Your daughter will go to jail. I know. She studied me for a moment. Then, all right, I'll be parked down the street. When you're ready, when they've said enough, you text Raymond. He signals me. I come in. Understood. Raymond positioned himself in the kitchen, out of sight. Clara went to her car. Connor sat on the couch in the living room, his hands folded in his lap, staring at the floor. I sat down in Eleanor's chair. 8:50. My hand was shaking. I clasped them together and tried to hold them still. Connor reached over and took my hand. He held it without saying a word. At 9 o'clock, the doorbell rang. I stood, took a breath, walked to the door. Sarah was standing on the porch in a black blazer, hair pulled back, looking polished and professional, like someone about to close a business deal. Behind her, Marcus was wearing a gray suit and carrying a briefcase. He looked calm, confident. Morning, Dad. Sarah's smile was bright. Ready? We got the appointment at 9:30. Come in, I said. We need to talk first. Something flickered across her face. She stepped inside. Marcus followed. I led them into the living room. Sarah stopped mid-step. Connor was on the couch. Tyler. Connor, she said sharply. What are you doing here? Why aren't you at school? Connor didn't answer. He just looked at her, his face still and empty. Sarah turned to me. For the first time, I saw her mask slip. Dad, what's going on? I closed the living room door, locked it, turned to face her. When I spoke, my voice was different from anything she'd heard from me in months. Steady, clear, no hesitation. Sit down, I said. Both of you. I want to stop right here and tell you something. I have built houses. I have built bridges. I have stood on scaffolding 40 feet in the air in the pouring rain, holding blueprints in the wind. And nothing, not one moment in 50 years, has ever required as much from me as what happened in the next 30 minutes in my own living room. What I said to my daughter and what Connor said is something I will carry until the day I die. They sat. Sarah was still trying to hold her smile in place. But the cracks were forming. I could see them. Friday night, I said. I called to wish you a happy birthday. You remember that? Yes, of course. Do you remember I mentioned signing the estate papers? A slight flush. Yes. I never hung up the phone, Sarah. The smile died. The silence that followed was absolute. I heard everything, I said. The old fool signed everything. Next week, we get him into Sunrise Gardens. Sell the house. Marcus shot to his feet. We didn't. Sit down. He sat. I reached into my pocket and set the transcript on the coffee table. Then the 6 appointment reminder cards, one at a time. March, May, July, September, October, November. 6 medical appointments, I said. 8 months of fake phone consultations. You build a medical history for a man whose mind is perfectly fine. Sarah's hands started to tremble. I reached into the side table drawer and pulled out the folder with Brad's financial records. Set it down without opening it. $847,000 in debt, I said. $1.2 million for this house. The math is not complicated. Sarah opened her mouth. Nothing came out. From the couch, Connor spoke. His voice was quiet, but it didn't waver. Mom made me write down every time Grandpa seemed confused. But he was never confused. She asked me to lie. She asked me to build fake evidence against my own grandfather. Sarah turned to him. Connor, you told him. Yes. His eyes were wet now, but his voice was solid. Because I love him. And you, Mom? His voice broke just slightly around the edges. I don't know who you are anymore. Sarah's face collapsed. Raymond stepped out of the kitchen. He held up a tablet, tapped the screen, and turned it toward them. The video played. Sarah on the front porch, Dr. Brennan beside her. The envelope. The handshake. Every word. Okay, I'll have the report written by this afternoon. Marcus exploded. You set us up. Yes, I said simply. I did. I let it settle for a moment. Now about this house, I continued. The house you were planning to sell to pay off Marcus's $847,000 in debt. I looked at Sarah steadily. I have some bad news for you. She looked at me, already knowing, already afraid. I transferred ownership of this house into an irrevocable trust. The beneficiary is Connor. This house doesn't belong to me anymore. It belongs to your son, and you cannot touch it. Sarah's whole body seemed to deflate. She looked like someone had pulled the ground out from beneath her. Dad. Her voice was barely a whisper. What did you do? I protected what I built. I sat down in Eleanor's chair. You could have come to me, I said. You could have sat in this living room and said, Dad, we're in trouble. We're in debt. We need help. I would have found a way. We would have figured something out. Sarah was crying now. Real tears, not the performance from Sunday. You don't understand, she choked. We were drowning. I know, I said, but you didn't ask. You decided it was easier to bury me alive and take what you wanted. The room was silent for a long moment. Do you remember your mother's ring? I asked. She blinked. The one you borrowed last year. For insurance appraisal. You never gave it back. I looked at her. I found a receipt, Sarah. July. $3,200. She covered her face with her hands. Her shoulders shook. That ring, I said, and my voice was very quiet now, is the one I gave your mother 40 years ago. I saved for 6 months to buy it. She wore it every single day until the day she died. And then Marcus stood up again. That's it. We're done here. You can't prove anything. Detective Harrison, I said. Please come in. The front door opened. Clara Harrison walked in, badge on her belt, 2 officers behind her. Marcus went gray. Clara looked at Sarah and Marcus with the calm of someone who had done this 1,000 times. Sarah Nicole Morrison. Marcus David Morrison. You are both under arrest for elder abuse, financial fraud, forgery, and bribery of a medical professional. She stepped forward, reaching for her belt. You have the right to remain silent. Sarah didn't move. She stared at the handcuffs like she couldn't make them real. Marcus tried one more time. This is insane. We didn't. Turn around, Mr. Morrison. One of the officers stepped forward. The handcuffs clicked into place. Clara turned to Sarah. Gently. Stand up, please. Sarah rose on shaking legs. She looked at Connor. He stood beside me now, gripping my hand so hard his knuckles were white. Connor. Her voice was breaking apart. Baby, I'm sorry. I did this for us. I was trying to. No. His voice was soft, but it didn't bend. You did this for money. You didn't care about Grandpa. You didn't care about me. A pause. He looked at her the way you look at a stranger. I'm staying with Grandpa. The sob that came from Sarah in that moment was the most painful sound I had ever heard. Because it was real, and because it was too late. Clara guided her toward the door. At the threshold, Sarah turned back. Dad. Her voice, barely a thread. Can't you forgive me? I looked at my daughter, at the woman she had become, at the girl I had raised, at the gap between those two things that I still couldn't entirely explain. You asked me about forgiveness, I said slowly. You tried to erase me. You sold your mother's ring. You used your own son to build a case against me. And now you ask me about forgiveness. Her face twisted. Dad, I'm your daughter. You used to be, I said. Now I don't know who you are. The door closed behind them. I heard the car start, the engines fading into the November morning. Connor stood beside me. We didn't speak. Outside, a car drove by. A dog barked somewhere down the street. Life going on, the way it always does, indifferent and steady. I put my arm around my grandson's shoulders, and we just stood there together in the quiet house, holding on. In the weeks that followed, things I expected didn't happen, and things I never expected did. A letter arrived from the jail. Connor asked to visit his mother, and one afternoon, 6 months after the arrest, I walked into a visitation room and sat down across from my daughter with a pane of glass between us. What she said to me, and what I said back, is something I've replayed every night since. Because it turns out that surviving the betrayal was only the beginning. Learning to live with what comes after, that's the real work. The legal process moved faster than I expected. Henry Whitmore called 6 weeks after the arrest. Sarah accepted a plea deal, he said. She confessed to all charges in exchange for a reduced sentence. 7 years instead of 15. Marcus took 5. No formal trial. It's over. I thanked him and hung up. Sat at the kitchen table in the quiet house. It's over. I kept waiting to feel something I recognized. Relief. Satisfaction. Closure. Instead, there was just emptiness. Not a painful emptiness. Just a stillness, like a room after a long storm. I had saved the house. I had saved myself. I had saved Connor. But I had lost my daughter. And I didn't know, then, if I'd ever get her back. Detective Clara Harrison called that afternoon to tell me Dr. Patricia Brennan had been arrested, confessed to accepting $2,500 from Sarah. Her medical license was revoked. 5 years in prison. And when Clara's team looked further, 12 other victims. 12 other families she had done this to. You stopped her, Clara said. I didn't feel like a hero. I just felt tired. Henry Whitmore called again 2 days later. We recovered $12,000 from Sarah's accounts. Money she'd drawn from yours over the past 6 months. A pause. And Mr. Hayes, we found Eleanor's ring. It was still at the pawn shop. Hadn't been moved. I redeemed it for $3,500. I'm sending it to you today. I couldn't speak for a moment. Thank you. I finally managed. Thank you, Henry. The package came that evening. I opened it at the kitchen table. Eleanor's ring, cleaned and polished. Looking exactly the way it had the day I slipped it onto her finger 40 years ago. I carried it upstairs and set it back in the wooden jewelry box, the one I'd built with cherry and maple inlay, the one she'd used every morning of our marriage. I closed the lid. You're home, I whispered. You're home. Weeks passed, then months. The email came from the county jail, Sarah's address in the header. Subject, please read this, Dad. I stared at it for a long time before I opened it. It was 3 pages, handwritten, scanned. Her writing was small and careful. Dad, I know sorry isn't enough. I know you can't forgive me. But I need you to know I didn't start out wanting to hurt you. 18 months ago, Marcus lost $500,000 in a bad real estate deal. We were facing foreclosure. I panicked. I thought, if I could sell your house, we'd clear the debt and I'd buy you something smaller. Easier to manage. I told myself I was helping you. But somewhere along the way, the plan got darker. I started cutting corners. I started lying. And the worst part is I started believing my own lies. I read about the ring, about the fake appointments, about Connor. I read until I reached the end. I'm not asking you to forgive me now. I know I don't deserve it. But maybe someday, 5 years, 10 years from now, you'll be able to look at me and see more than just a traitor. Maybe you'll see the daughter who used to love you. I accept this punishment. I deserve it. But I still love you. Even if you don't believe me, it's true. Love, Sarah. I set the phone down. I didn't reply, but I didn't delete it either. I printed it out, folded it carefully, and placed it in the bottom drawer of Eleanor's old desk, the one where she used to keep her diary. Connor moved in fully by the end of November. He set up his homework at the kitchen table most evenings, the same table where I used to grade blueprints after dinner when Sarah was small. He asked thoughtful questions about engineering, about the foundation, about justice and mercy, and when one of them had to come before the other. He kept me honest. He kept me going. 6 months after the arrest, Connor asked if he could visit his mother. I drove him to the facility and waited in the parking lot for 30 minutes. When he came back to the car, his eyes were red. We drove in silence for a few miles. Then he said quietly, she asked if I forgive her. I said I'm trying, but I need more time. I reached over and put my hand on his shoulder. That's honest, I said. Honesty is enough. He nodded, stared out the window. She cried the whole time, he said. I didn't answer. There wasn't anything to say to that. 10 months after her arrest, I went myself. I sat down in the visitation room. A guard outside the door. Glass between us. A phone receiver in my hand. Sarah looked older. Her hair was pulled back. No makeup. Face pale. She looked like someone who had been doing a great deal of thinking. She picked up the phone on her side. Dad. Her voice was thin. Thank you for coming. I let the silence stretch between us. Then, are you okay? She shook her head. No, but I'm alive. And I think about you and Connor every day. A pause. I know I can't undo it. I just want you to know, I see it now. All of it. What I did to you. What I did to him. What I did to Mom's memory. I looked at her through the glass. I'm trying to forgive you, Sarah, I said. It's a process. Some days I've made progress. Other days I'm still angry. But I refuse to carry that anger forever. I thought of Eleanor, of what she used to say. Forgiveness isn't for the other person. It's so you can let go of the rock you're carrying. Sarah wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. How's Connor? He's strong, I said. Applying to college. Want to study justice and advocacy. Her face crumpled. That's good. A whisper. Tell him I'm proud of him. I will. We talked for 10 more minutes. Small things. Careful things. When the guard signaled that time was up, I stood, and I placed my palm flat against the glass. After a moment, Sarah placed hers on the other side. I left the facility feeling lighter. Not free of the weight, but lighter. The following November, 1 year after that Friday phone call, I stood at a podium in a downtown Portland conference room. 50 faces looking back at me. Survivors. Journalists. A city council member. The board of the Eleanor Foundation for Elder Justice. Named for my wife. Built with the recovered assets and donations that had come in after our story became public. Behind me, 3 photographs on a stand. Eleanor at our wedding. Connor on the old backyard swing. Raymond and I sitting at the kitchen table reviewing evidence. 2 old men in the lamplight, building something together. I looked out at the room. A year ago, I said, the people I trusted most made plans to take my home and my freedom. And they nearly succeeded. Because I did what a lot of us do. I signed documents without reading them. I trusted without verifying. I assumed that love was a substitute for vigilance. And it cost me almost everything. The room was very quiet. But I also learned something else. I learned that family is not only who you are born to. It is who stands beside you when everything collapses. It is who helps you build again. I looked at the front row. Raymond, nodding slowly. Henry Whitmore beside him with his legal pad. Clara Harrison near the door, badge on her belt. And Connor, 17 now, a senior in high school, sitting straight-backed with his eyes focused and clear. He had applied to Portland State the week before. Justice studies. He had told me last Saturday, sitting on the old swing in the backyard. Grandpa, after I graduate, I want to spend every break volunteering for the foundation. I had nodded. We'll be lucky to have you. Tell me in the comments. Has anything like this ever touched your life? Have you ever had to fight for what was yours or watched someone you love fall this far? Tell me in the comments. And if you've dealt with something similar, share your story. You're not alone. Subscribe for more stories about standing your ground and reclaiming your life. Because these stories matter. Because the people living them deserve to know that someone else made it through. After the ceremony, Connor and I sat together on that old swing in the backyard. The ropes creaked softly in the evening air. The Portland sky turned orange and purple above us, the way it does in November when the clouds catch the last of the light. Do you ever regret it? Connor asked quietly. I thought about it. A long time. Really thought about it. I regret that it came to that. I finally said. I regret the years of lies. I regret all the things I didn't see when I should have. A pause. But no, I don't regret protecting you. Or this house. Or the truth. I looked at him. Love doesn't mean letting someone destroy you. Sometimes it means saying no. He leaned his head against my shoulder. I love you, Grandpa. I put my arm around him. This tall, serious boy who had chosen the harder right thing over the easier wrong one. This young man who had sat across from his own mother in a visitation room and said, I'm trying, but I need more time. This boy who carried Eleanor's jawline and my stubborn eyes. I love you too, kid, I said. The sun went down. The foundation we built was strong. But the foundation we are, the two of us, what we went through and what we survived and what we chose to become on the other side of it, that foundation was stronger still. And I knew, sitting there in the cooling November air with my grandson's weight against my shoulder, that Eleanor was somewhere near. In the lavender, still growing wild at the garden's edge. In the old wooden swing she used to push Sarah on, 30 years ago, before any of this had happened yet. She was near, and she was at peace. The Eleanor Foundation for Elder Justice provides free legal advocacy, investigative support, and counseling to victims of elder financial abuse across the Pacific Northwest. If you or someone you love is facing a situation like this, please reach out. You do not have to fight alone.